Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A 4-day ceasefire has been called by the UN Secretary General as the war between Ukraine and Russia rages on. More than 400 people have died and more than 40,000 are homeless as devastating flooding hits many regions of South Africa. And there's more talk of the Trudeau Liberals potentially implementing a tax on new trucks. Political reporter Brian Lilly has the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for a 4-day ceasefire in Ukraine so people there can get out of some of the embattled regions such as Mariupol and Kherson, and humanitarian aid can get in. Guterres says the Orthodox Christian Easter period should be a moment to unite around saving lives and furthering dialogue to end the suffering in Ukraine. Russia ratcheted up its control for the eastern Donbass region, with the leader of Chechnya predicting Mariupol could fall at any time. The Pentagon says Russia has added more artillery and ground combat forces for its full-scale offensive in Donbass.
I mean, we have seen the Russians continue to flow in enablers, capabilities that will help them fight in the Donbass going forward. That's artillery, rotary aviation, helicopter support, command and control enablers, and we do believe that they have reinforced the number of battalion tactical groups in the east and the south of Ukraine. Now, we can't say specifically where all these battalions, these tactical groups are going, but we have seen over the last few days that they've added now more than 10 to what they already had there in that part of the country. Separate and distinct from that, Bob, we have continued to see the concentration of their airstrikes and artillery in the Donbass and in the south, particularly around and in Mariupol. That's where the preponderance of their strike activity has gone, and the fighting with Mariupol, as you guys have all seen, continues. The Ukrainians are still resisting. The city has not fallen to the Russians, but they continue to pound it from the air and through long-range fires.
Ukrainian troops, meanwhile, are fighting on the front line in the country's eastern Donbass region. They said they were ready to counter the imminent full-scale Russian threat.
Як я в 16-му році теж сказав, то сунуть на нашу землю, хай сунуть, вони тут повинні остатися. Землі у нас кожному хватить. На метр, на півтора, на два. Тобто без питань, хай пхнуть, добігаються.
Grief and guilt competed with anticipation and excitement with several Ukrainian students who chose to leave their country as the war with Russia rages on. Many recently attended a conference on diplomacy in New York City.
Worry as well that I could make a decision to go back to Kyiv to see my family, because for me it's hard to be not alone, but without a support of my family and without clear understanding what's going to be tomorrow.
The whole this time, my soul was tearing into pieces, into tiny little pieces, just because of two things. First of all, I can understand the danger that is over my family right now, and second of all, I could feel really bad guilt for being safe.
When I arrived, my mind had some rest, and in 2 days I decided that it's dangerous for me to come back to my hometown, because I have no place to stay in Ukraine somewhere else besides my hometown, and Russian military troops started to bomb my hometown, and that's really painful for me because my parents are there.
FEBC Ukraine presenter Igor Sarita says their broadcasts are having a major impact on the lives of the people in Lviv in western Ukraine. He says they're trying to present hope to Ukrainians in the embattled region.
Hello everyone, my name is Igor and I am a part of FEBC Team Ukraine. As you can see right now, I am staying on the railway station here in Lviv, in Ukraine. A lot of refugees, thousands of people who are coming to this city with hopeless, with pain in their heart, with broken hearts, and we are here to help the people. We are making our broadcasting, we are just speaking with the people, and even in Lviv we have a lot of our listeners, a lot of our viewers who are ready to receive Jesus as their Lord. We try to help people, and we are making broadcasting, we are making videos, and a lot of people are ready to pray, and a lot of people are ready to receive Jesus. So I just want to encourage you, pray for us, pray for Ukraine. Thank you for your support, and we really need here. And we are here to work with these people, to work with this brokenness, hopeless people. So thank you very much. God bless you.
South Africa has declared a national state of disaster after floods have killed at least 443 people, displaced more than 40,000 others, and destroyed close to 4,000 homes. The government is allocating $67 million to help those most affected, along with sending in the military to deliver food, water, and clothing. Government officials say these are some of the heaviest rains they've seen in 60 years. The Alberta government announced that more assistance is on the way to help connect underemployed or unemployed Albertans with a growing number of jobs here in our economy. Premier Jason Kenney says an additional $23 million over 3 years will be spent as part of the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. It will help business owners the skills they need to grow and diversify. An additional $41 million over 3 years will be spent to support Alberta's training for work programs.
We're investing in new training, providing funding to post-secondary institutions, training the unemployed, and retraining the underemployed. And this is Alberta at Work. Alberta at Work will remove barriers to good jobs for anyone who is underrepresented in the workforce, recently graduated, or who needs to change to a new job.
Drivers heading into British Columbia from Alberta on the Trans-Canada Highway will need to take another route for the next month. BC Transportation says Highway 1 will close at the Kicking Horse Canyon east of Golden, BC. The closure will remain in effect until noon on May the 20th. Drivers headed west can still go as far as Lake Louise and Field, BC along the Trans-Canada. The sister of one of the two men who has been missing since a small plane they were in disappeared in Ontario last week says the men were from Alberta. John Fair and Brian Slingerland took off in southern Ontario, but their plane vanished Thursday in the Wawa area near Sault Ste. Marie. Fair's sister, Mary Reimer, says they were on their way to Marathon to pick up a plane Slingerland recently purchased. A spokesperson with the Canadian Armed Forces says the search is complex due to the challenging terrain and poor weather conditions over the past few days. Fire officials say it could take a number of days to seal a natural gas leak on the eastern outskirts of Edmonton. Firefighters were called Monday night to the leak at the Imperial Oil Tank Farm. Edmonton Fire Rescue Services says the leak stems from a valving problem that Imperial is working to fix. Officials say the leak does not pose a risk to the public, but you'll still notice that rotten egg smell for another week or two. Lethbridge fire crews responded to a couple of blazes late Monday. First, they were called to a fourplex in the 500 block of 9th Avenue North around 11:15 p.m. Fortunately, there were no injuries as crews from 4 stations were able to quickly douse the flames. Several pets, however, did go missing, and damage is estimated at $1.25 million. Shortly after that, fire crews were notified about another blaze in the 500 block of 13th Street South. Crews from Lethbridge worked with the Coaldale and Colehurst fire departments to put out that second fire. There were no injuries and damage was estimated at $150,000. Both fires are under investigation. A number of cities across Canada are still dealing with an opioid crisis. Sadly, many who are addicted to drugs turn to a life of crime to help feed their habit. We chatted with Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh about the opioid crisis here in our city and how the federal drug court is having a huge impact helping people turn their lives around.
Right now, we have 8 people who have gone through the program and many more who are on the list to get into that program. And the 8 people who've actually gone in the program, we haven't seen them again. It's working effectively for them. These courts actually are providing people an opportunity to get out of that lifestyle, but more importantly, providing them with skills, housing, etc., to get them on the right track in life.
Chief Shaheen Medizadeh will also discuss how the recent pandemic has impacted his officers with increased cases of PTSD. That Q&A is coming up later in our broadcast. As you've heard on Bridge City News, Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is being blasted over the Liberals discussing the possibility of implementing a tax on trucks and SUVs. Political reporter Brian Lilly has the details.
This is an existing tax, but it's only on really big, what they called back in 2007 when they brought it in a gas guzzlers tax. But the proposal would expand it to Ford F-150s, Ram 3500s, Jeep Wranglers, popular SUVs, popular trucks, and would add between $1,000 and $4,000 per vehicle.
Brian Lilly will also have the latest on the CPC leadership campaign and who the frontrunners are when it comes to selling Conservative memberships. Watch for that full interview coming up after Business News. Well, it's been a long time coming, but site preparations are underway for a new West Side school here in Lethbridge. The building located in Gary Station will have the capacity to accommodate 900 students.
Groundbreaking, there's two different kinds of groundbreaking. We're right now in design for site grades and the playing fields. In the playing fields are usually developed about 2 years in advance of opening so that they have time to grow out and be established. So that's being done by the developer right now. So that's just in design. We're hoping to be out for tender relatively soon, or the developer is, and construction work shall begin late spring and should be wrapped up by October.
Construction on the building itself won't take place until 2023, and the division is looking at opening the doors to welcome new students by the fall of 2025. Claresholm is home to one of the only drop-in clubhouses in southern Alberta dedicated to people struggling with mental health issues. For the first time in 2 years, a fundraising 5K walk will be held in person to support Sparta House. The event, called Sparta Stomp, hopes to raise awareness for mental health and to stomp out many of the stigmas attached to it.
At the clubhouse, we talk a lot about the stigma that surrounds mental health. We have, lots of people feel really insecure about getting a job or employment because they're not sure of employers' understanding. Even just people don't tend to be comfortable disclosing their illness, even in their, family life, social circles, just because they're worried about the stigma. There is a really negative stigma that surrounds mental health, just a lot of, what you hear in the media sometimes is like the most extremes and the worst. So we wanted to just kind of flip the script.
Now, the event will be held Saturday, May 7th in Claresholm. Mark that down on the calendar. You can register in person the day of the event just outside of Sparta House, located in Claresholm. The Manitoba government is promising to speed up the cleanup of some orphaned and abandoned mine sites. The province has budgeted $50 million over the next 5 years to reduce environmental risks posed by the sites. Cleanups can include removing debris, installing shaft camps, and covering various tailings. It was on this date that Pope Benedict XVI becomes the Pope. Tragedy struck with the Oklahoma City bombings, and the Branch Davidian siege near Waco, Texas ended. This is Today in History for April the 19th.
April 19th, 1995.
From my office at the door where I normally enter, and there's nothing there anymore. It's from me to these individuals that the building's gone.
In Oklahoma City, a truck bomb destroys the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The blast kills 168 people and wounds hundreds more. Timothy McVeigh is later convicted and executed for the bombing. 1775. The American Revolution begins as colonial militias in Massachusetts fight British troops at the battles of Lexington and Concord. 2005. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger of Germany is elected pope, taking the name of Benedict XVI. He becomes head of the Roman Catholic Church just weeks after the death of Pope John Paul II. 1993. A fiery end to the 51-day siege at the Branch Davidian compound near Waco, Texas. Flames consume the structure after federal agents begin smashing their way inside. Religious leader David Koresh and dozens of his followers die in the fire. 1956. Oscar-winning actress Grace Kelly marries Prince Rainier of Monaco and becomes Princess Grace. And 2001.
We can do it. We can make our dreams come true.
In New York, the Mel Brooks musical The Producers, starring Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, opens on Broadway. Today in history, April 19th. Ed Donahue, The Associated Press.
Now here's something you don't see every day, at least not here in Canada. Sheriff's deputies in Florida captured video of a large alligator going through for a leisurely stroll through a neighborhood, slowly walking across various lawns before making its way to a nearby community lake. Although many Floridians have learned to coexist with alligators, the potential for conflict always exists. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission says from 1999 to 2019, there have been 16 fatal attacks involving alligators. Wow. Well, it was nice to see double-digit temperatures once again in southwestern Alberta. And if you're looking for cooler temperatures with a little bit of moisture, your prayers may be answered. Full weather details are coming up. You know, it wasn't a bad spring-like day here in Lethbridge as we hovered around the 10-degree mark. Tonight, however, there's a 30% chance of flurries developing with a low near -1. Wednesday, more clouds with a chance of flurries again and a daytime high expected near 6. Thursday, showers developing with the mercury dropping to 3. A high-pressure system returns on Friday, clearing out the clouds, bringing more sunshine with a high near 10. Just a few clouds on Saturday with high expected near 10 degrees again. Even warmer on Sunday under a partly cloudy sky with a high near 14. A mixture of sun and cloud is on the way at 16 degrees for Monday. Now the average high for this time of year is 14 degrees and an average low of 0. The highest temperature on this date was recorded back in 1962 at 29 degrees, and the record low was a cool -13 in 1951. The sun rose at 6:31 and set at 8:30. Looking at Wednesday's national forecast now, expect showers and a high of 10 degrees in Victoria, a chance of rain developing and 14 for Vancouver. Edmonton had a snowfall warning on Tuesday. Wednesday, more of the white stuff and a high of 3. Light snow expected in Calgary and a high of 4 degrees. Snow mixed with rain and a high of 3 for Regina. Periods of snow and +1 is on tap for Saskatoon on Wednesday. Expect rain and snow and a high of only 3 degrees for Winnipeg. It should be mainly sunny in Toronto with a high near 11. Just a few clouds and 9 is on tap for Ottawa, clearing and 8 degrees for Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect light showers and 9 degrees in Fredericton, a mixture of sun and cloud and 10 in Halifax, mainly sunny and 9 degrees in Charlottetown, and in St. John's, expect light showers and a high of 7 degrees on Wednesday. The International Monetary Fund is downgrading its outlook for the world economy to 3.6% this year. That is down from its January predictions of growth of 4.4%. The prediction for 2023 remains steady, however, at 3.6%. It is blaming Russia's war with Ukraine. The IMF expects Russia's economy, which has been battered by sanctions, will shrink 8.5% this year, while Ukraine's will shrink by 35%. The Canadian Real Estate Association says home sales were down 16.3% last month compared with the all-time record set in March of last year. The national average home price was up 11.2% to just over $796,000 as demand outpaced supply. CREA says sales were down 5.4% from February as the number of newly listed homes fell 5.5% on a month-over-month basis. Association Chair Jill O'Dill says there was a slowdown in March compared to February, but it remains to be seen whether this is the beginning of the long-awaited cooling-off period. Johnson & Johnson is suspending sales forecasts for its COVID-19 vaccine only a few months after saying the shot would bring in as much as $3.5 billion US this year. The healthcare giant says a sharp supply and demand with uncertainty prompted the move. Johnson & Johnson's one-shot vaccine brought in $457 million in global sales during the first quarter, with most of that coming from outside of the United States. After a decade of growth, Netflix says it lost 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter. That's the first time the streaming service lost subscribers since 2011. Company officials also say they plan on losing another 2 million customers in the current second quarter, setting up the worst year ever as a public company. Officials blame the losses on various causes, including password sharing and growing competition. The company says there are 100 million households that use the service who don't even pay for it. That's on top of the 221.6 million subscribers. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 140 points on the day to finish at 22,018. The Dow was up 499 points to 34,911. The S&P 500 was up 70 points to 4462, and the Nasdaq was up 287 on the day to 13,619. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 571 to 102.80 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 58 cents to 7.25 US. Gold was up 2 cents to $19.50.12 US an ounce, and silver was down a cent to $25.17 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $13.88 per bushel, barley's at $9.69, canola's at $26.03, and corn is at $11.94 per bushel. Live cattle were up 88 cents to $141.35. Feeder cattle were up 88 cents as well to $156.65, and lean hogs June contract is down $1.08 to $121.33. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.25 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta government announced that it is investing an additional $23 million over 3 years as part of the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. It will help business owners the skills they need to grow and diversify. An additional $41 million over 3 years will support Alberta's Training for Work programs, which supports those who are unemployed or underemployed develop the skills they need to re-enter the workforce. The Trudeau Liberals have apparently been discussing a potential new tax to be put on new trucks and SUVs. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have details for us in just a moment. There has been a lot of talk recently about the Trudeau Liberals putting a tax back on trucks and SUVs. The Liberals say, we're just misinformed. But to talk about this in more detail is our political reporter, Brian Lilly, who joins us once again from Toronto. So, Brian, Minister Guilbeault said it was just a recommendation and that the government's only considering it at this point in time. What have you heard?
This all started because, longtime friend of mine, former colleague Chris Sims from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, wrote a column for us at the Toronto Sun, Hal, that said, hey, look at the back of their 2013 emissions plan. What's in there? Expanding the green levy. This is an existing tax, but it's only on really big, what they called back in 2007 when they brought it in a gas guzzlers tax. But the proposal would expand it to Ford F-150s, Ram 3500s, Jeep Wranglers, popular SUVs, popular trucks, and would add between $1,000 and $4,000 per vehicle. So Chris pointed at that and said, look, this is in their emissions plan. The government said, no, this is disinformation. He accused Chris Sims of being partisan and that the Taxpayers Federation was out to get them. But it's right in their report. Now, they claim it's just in the annex and it's a recommendation from an outside group. Hal, I've been around government a very long time. You know what they don't publish? Recommendations from outside groups they don't agree with. And I want to point you to something else. When Minister Guilbeault, before he entered politics, he used to be the spokesperson for a group called Equiterre. It's a Quebec-based environmental group. They submitted in 2017 budget recommendations. Here's what we think the government should do. It included expanding this green levy in exactly the same way as the annex in the government report calls for. So, what are we to believe? We're to believe that the Trudeau Liberals are obviously scared of putting an extra $1,000 in tax on the number one selling vehicle in the country. That's the F-150. And a lot of pickup trucks and SUVs are in the top 10. And they're also running scared from this. They don't know what to do, so they're saying it's not going to happen. But I seem to recall hearing time and again before the 2019 election that they were not going to increase the carbon tax. There were no plans. This was not going to happen. These are just reports from bureaucrats at Environment Canada. Well, guess what they did? They upped the tax, and I think they would do it again here if we stop looking.
So, Brian, while the Prime Minister says he won't put a green tax on trucks and SUVs, they're talking about the need to reduce emissions and to move ahead with more electric vehicles, if only we can actually afford an electric vehicle. Have you seen the prices lately? Now, Brian, at the same time, Prime Minister Trudeau is also getting blasted over his own travel plans and carbon footprint. Tell me more.
Yeah, so we flew out to Victoria, British Columbia a week ago to say we need to move towards electric vehicles. And look, electric vehicles are getting better and they're getting cheaper. That's good news. They still cost more than a regular one. There's still a premium. I've heard rave reviews from people who've driven the F-150 electric to go back to the pickup truck. Apparently it moves great, but it does cost more. But he says, well, we've got to do this. And he's flying all over the country. He flies from Ottawa to Victoria, then to Edmonton, then on to Laval, Quebec. And then he flies back to Whistler to go snowboarding for the weekend. He was in Whistler from Wednesday of last week right across the Easter break. He left sometime late Monday because now he's flown to the other side of the country again. This guy, if he actually believed what he was saying about emissions, maybe he would have done the tour Laval, Edmonton, Victoria, and then he just has to pop back over to Vancouver so he can go snowboarding in Whistler. This isn't about him having a vacation, Hal. We can all use downtime, but this is about flying all over the country from one side to the other and back again while telling the rest of us to drop our emissions. Just his flights alone were more than half of what the average Canadian emits in carbon in a full year. That's just for his portion of the flights.
Now, speaking of flying across the country, Brian, our Prime Minister is in New Brunswick to make a health announcement. This comes as premiers say Trudeau has not really done enough to fund health care despite multiple promises. What are the premiers saying?
Premier John Horgan, who speaks for the Council of the Federation, has gone on the offensive and was doing a bunch of interviews last week saying, hey, look, it'd be nice to have a national dental plan. That sounds great. But how about funding primary health care so that we can do the hip and knee replacement, so that we can have a human resources strategy for the primary care sector, like making sure there are nurses and doctors there to care for you when you need them. That's been an issue over the past couple of years. The Trudeau government has refused to sit down and do what they promised they would do. In the 2015 election, they promised a summit, they promised a new health accord, they promised long-term stable funding. Instead, they implemented the plan that Stephen Harper had put in place that they said would amount to cuts. Those so-called cuts, which is just a smaller increase than they'd been getting, those didn't take effect until 2 years into Trudeau's mandate. So he's actually providing less money for the healthcare system than Stephen Harper did. He is refusing to meet with premiers to discuss this in any substantial way, but he's going around saying, hey, let's partner up on new programs. Premiers are rightly concerned, worried, and skeptical about what's going on this, and saying, you know what, let's have a real conversation about healthcare funding. You take all the money up in taxes, start sharing it with us the way that you promised so that we can fund the healthcare system properly.
Brian, Edmonton-based discount carrier Flair Airlines faces an uncertain future. Now, the Canadian Transportation Agency says the airline may not be Canadian under law, even though the Trudeau government put more than, 11 million taxpayers' dollars into the airline? Could the cheap flight airline be grounded?
Well, that's what passengers have to worry about, is that the government, if they follow the letter of the law, could come in and say, okay, Flair, you're not Canadian. At the beginning of May, you can't fly anymore. Your license is revoked. I don't think that's going to happen. And Flair will address this issue later in the week with a news conference. But, this is frustrating, Hal. We need discount carriers in Canada. They've had them in the United States for a long time. They've had them in the UK, across continental Europe. People are able to get cheap discount flights. Now, it's not for everyone. You're going to pay if you want to take on a, check a bag. You're going to pay if you want to do a carry-on. But if you want a cheap getaway flight, it's a great way to travel that other parts of the world have had. Flair Airlines took some extra funding from a US-based company to help them during the COVID pandemic, and that's what's at issue. But that funding was coming from the investment firm at the same time as we had the Federal Economic Development Agency from Southern Ontario giving them $3 million. Prairie Can, what used to be called Western Economic Diversification, was giving them $8.3 million at the same time as they're getting this funding. Didn't they do their due diligence? So what frustrates the rest of the airline industry, whether it's Air Canada or Air Transat or WestJet, is that, hey, look, we're following the rules. We're not taking this. You guys have now put money into the company, and you're going to decide if they get to keep the license. You're both the referee and the player. This has just put the Trudeau government in an awful situation. I'm not sure you can get more Canadian, more of an Ottawa story than saying an airline based in Canada isn't Canadian, even as the federal government puts money into it.
Let me ask you something. If Flair Airlines is grounded, where will that leave passengers without insurance?
It would leave them stranded. Now, the company has asked for an 18-month extension. I've been speaking to some industry sources that believe that Flair will get an extension, won't be as long as 18 months, but they will get an extension to refinance so that it is 100% Canadian. I don't think the Trudeau government wants to be in the situation of being the ones that strand passengers and shut down a discount airline because of technicalities. The rules are the rules and they have to be enforced, but you don't want to be leaving people stranded. So they'll probably give the company time to restructure and bring themselves in line with the rules.
A number of Canadian parents had to scramble during the COVID-19 pandemic to find alternate arrangements when schools and daycares were closed, Brian. But a new ruling for federal employees shows that we're not all in this together and that federal workers actually got a special deal.
This was a grievance by the Public Service Alliance of Canada, the largest public sector union in the country. And they said that, look, our members shouldn't have had to have used sick days or vacation days or parental leave or family leave days in order to look after their kids. Well, that's what a lot of other Canadians had to do. These guys were getting paid no matter what, but they wanted to keep their extra leave days that they're paid for and just get what's called leave with pay, a 699 pay. There were thousands upon thousands of federal workers on that system. Billions of dollars were spent because some federal workers were told, go home to work, even though they couldn't. So they sat at home and collected their pay. There were no layoffs, not of any significance at the federal level. I don't recall many in provincial governments or municipal governments across the country. So civil servants definitely had a better lot than people working in the private sector. We saw millions of Canadians lose their jobs or lose significant number of hours during the pandemic. That didn't happen. And now this ruling from the Federal Labor Relations Board for the civil service is saying, you know what, you've got to give them back those previous sick days or vacation days that they used and just pay them leave with pay for any time that they had to take off due to COVID shutdowns. Again, it just shows that we may have said we're all in this together, but we really weren't.
Brian, the leadership race continues for the Conservative Party of Canada. Now, over the weekend, you published a story about huge crowds Pierre Poilievre is drawing and whether anyone can actually beat him for the leadership. Well, let me ask you, can anyone beat this born and raised Calgarian, Mr. Pierre Poilievre?
It depends. It depends. Look, a lot of the biggest rallies that we saw for Pierre Poilievre were in Alberta. The Conservative Party already does really well in Alberta, and you have to remember how the voting system works. For Pierre Poilievre to win, he has to keep drawing those crowds and selling the memberships in other parts of the country, Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic Canada. Each riding, and there's 338 of them, is allocated 100 points. As long as your riding has 100 members, then when voting day comes, you can have 10,000 members in a riding or 100 members in a riding. That riding is worth 100 points. So you've got to make sure that you've got support spread out across the country. So the crowds are impressive. And if he keeps drawing them everywhere he goes, and if he's selling the memberships and they come out and vote, then yeah, he's going to win. But it's not a shoo-in. It's not guaranteed. There have been many times across many parties where you're using preferential ballot or you're using runoffs, which you have to do when you've got a bunch of candidates. And I think there's, 11 in the race now, where you see someone come up the middle and end up winning. So, the Jean Charest camp, the Patrick Brown camp, the Leslyn Lewis camp, they're all telling me that they're in it to win it and that they have the ability to do so and that they're selling memberships where it matters. So for Patrick Brown, that includes going into not just immigrant and ethnic communities across the country, minority communities, and saying, look, I'm here for your religious freedom. But he also told me that he's going into municipalities, and he always meets with the firefighter and police unions to say, hey, I'm a big city mayor. I didn't put in vaccine mandates. Jean Charest is going across the country appealing to a different crowd than Pierre Poilievre and trying to make sure that he's signing up members in places where he needs to win, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, but they say they won't forget the West. And then Leslyn Lewis is using her base within social conservatives to expand beyond that, like she did last time. Her worry has to be, is a lot of the excitement that she picked up, especially across the West last time, is that being taken up now by Pierre Poilievre?
You know, it's interesting too, I was watching what David Aiken, one of our former co-workers, was tweeting. He's now with Global National, obviously, and he's tweeting about how Jean Charest is not really drawing a lot of people with some of his crowds. He had maybe 20 or 30 people come out recently in cottage country in Ontario, where Pierre Poilievre thousands upon thousands of people. What are you seeing with some of the other candidates outside of the memberships? What kind of crowds are they really drawing?
None of them are drawing close to what Pierre Poilievre is drawing. But again, it depends on how you're selling memberships. As I said, if Pierre's drawing these crowds everywhere and selling them memberships, he's going to win. And look, he's doing some smart things. Like if you're waiting in the photo line, they're coming along and asking you if you're a member. And, you know, it'd be kind of awkward if you get up to meet Pierre and you don't have a membership. They're selling them on the spot there. If the others are going in and doing meetings of 20, 30 people, but they're getting the membership numbers they need, then the crowd size doesn't matter. It's all about selling memberships and then getting those people out to vote where it matters. Because, you know, small town New Brunswick may have fewer members, but they count just as much. They count more come election time than 10,000 people in one riding in Alberta.
Elon Musk's attempt to take over Twitter was denounced because it would allow the billionaire to own a media outlet. But Brian, last time I checked, Amazon's Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and Canada's very own David Thompson owns Reuters.
Yeah, people forget about that. And David Thompson, by the way, last time I checked the Forbes rich list, he's number 26. He's doing pretty well for himself, and he owns the Globe and Mail. I believe his holding company owns significant shares of Bell Media, and he owns Reuters, one of the world's global giant wire services. You've got Michael Bloomberg, who's just ahead of David Thompson. He owns, what's his news service called? Oh, yeah, Bloomberg. And then you've got Mark Zuckerberg owning Facebook. So look, it's a bit bizarre. They only seem to like or dislike billionaires buying things if they disagree with them politically. I'm neither here nor there on Elon Musk. I find him to be an interesting curiosity. I'm not actually sure of his politics. I know a lot of conservatives are embracing him suddenly. I'm not sure where his politics actually lie. They may be all over the place, but he has said he wants to buy Twitter in order to bring free speech back. And a lot of conservatives have been worried that they've been shadow banned, they've been downgraded on Twitter, that they're not allowed to say what they think or they'll be kicked off. Musk has said he's going to fix that. And he made that plea actually at a TED Talk in Vancouver last week. That was interesting. But this seems to be annoying an awful lot of people who say, well, if we're allowed free speech, I'm out of here. All right, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Many cities have similar issues, including crime and an opioid crisis, but not every city tackles the issue the same way. Joining us today to talk a bit more about what's happening here in Lethbridge is Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh to discuss how he and his team at the LPS are tackling some of these very hot issues. Chief Medizadeh, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
You bet. Now, you spent over 30 years with the Rcmp, and now you're with the Lethbridge Police Service. What have been some of the biggest fundamental differences between working for a federal police force compared to a municipal one?
Well, in a nutshell, not much. It's police work is police work. Doesn't matter what stripe of you put on your pants and what type of badge you wear. It's all about providing the service to the community. And as you know, with the Rcmp, the only difference was that because it's a much larger organization with their hands into both federal and frontline policing, there were some different opportunities. But again, all police forces in this country, regardless of where they are or what badge they wear, their purpose is to serve the community and citizens.
So, Chief Medizadeh, what are your thoughts on the province potentially bringing in a provincial police force and no longer using the Rcmp?
Well, my opinion is really not important really in that front, but obviously we know province is doing some studies in relation to going in that direction. What I can offer though is, as an Rcmp member for almost 32 years, I know Rcmp, not just in Alberta, but in any other province or territory that they serve, they provide great service to the citizens. And but again, it's a decision that the province has to make, and I don't think my opinion really matters.
Now, when he was Justice Minister, Casey Medu asked you to submit a report a couple of times discussing how the Lethbridge Police Service has changed, more accountability, transparent, and have a better culture. Is that settled now? Is the province happy with your reports?
Well, we obviously, when the report was submitted, we had to send it a second time because minister wanted more information into the different areas. So which we added those and resubmitted the report. But when you look at the report, Al, we've made that public, the highlight of the report. The report wasn't about stuff that we were just starting. This stuff we had started a long time before minister got engaged and basically came with that, gave us that direction. We basically compiled all the initiatives that we were already working on based on the gaps we had seen within the organization, both internal and external, to try to come up with solutions. And we basically, our report is compilation of all the initiatives that we had already started to assure the minister and his office that this department wasn't a department that existed in 2017, 2018. We are moving forward. And today I'm very happy to say that we have moved forward. There were some unfortunate incidents during that time period that we're still dealing with, and they're under basically hearings and investigations. But those incidents don't define our organization today, and we have moved forward. And from the beginning, I've also asked people to just move forward with us, and we certainly reflect on the past, the mistakes that were made, the misconducts that were exhibited, but I'm more focused on looking at today and tomorrow versus staying in the year 2018. By me doing that, it's not going to serve this community or any citizen anything.
So has the province said to you specifically there are more issues that need addressing, or do you think it's all been covered now?
I believe we've covered that. From my perspective, our problems in Lethbridge, with Lethbridge Police, we're not unique. Unfortunately, these kind of behavior have been exhibited other places as well. In our case, it was more political, but we've taken huge measures to actually move forward to make sure that behavior like that, basically we have clear policies, we have clear protocols to make sure our employees don't engage in those type of activities. But we all know humans, I can't guarantee that nobody ever does, same as any other police department. I'm sure you agree that you can read these things for other police departments when people commit acts of misconduct. I think the important thing is when we actually identify those, we deal with them swiftly and hold people accountable. But again, holding people accountable, it has to be done through a legal process, respecting other people's rights and everyone's rights, because everyone, even if you're a criminal, you still deserve to be treated with respect and through the legal processes we have in this country. At no time we can really go outside of those posts, because if we do, it's actually going to give those people who commit acts of misconduct a way out, because we are not respecting their rights.
What were your thoughts when Casey Medu was blasted for calling the Edmonton police chief to chat about a distracted driving ticket? Now, what would you have said to Medu if he would have called you and said, hey, I received this distracted driving ticket here in Lethbridge, can we talk about it?
Well, I don't really want to comment on that, because as you know, even the nature of the call, etc., that's under investigation. But in my case, as a chief of police, if someone calls me about a ticket, my quick response to them would be paid. I've got myself, I have to admit it, photo radar tickets that I just go pay. And really at the end, that's just the way it goes. But again, I can't really comment on that specific incident because I wasn't involved. And as I've said before, I'm sure you heard me say that before, even when a lot of the media was attacking us, and even some of our prominent citizens here, all I ask people is just wait for the facts to come out. And I believe in this case, that's the exact same position I'm going to take is there's an investigation going on, and I think we all need to wait for the facts to come out, and then we can make our own assumptions based on those facts.
So Chief Medizadeh, let's talk about crime here in our city in Lethbridge. What kind of crime are you seeing specifically right now, and how much of it is tied in with our drug crisis?
Well, majority of the crime that's really brings us to, brings our crime up are basically property crimes, and more important than that, opportunity crimes. And these are directly tied with the drug crisis and addiction issues and homelessness, etc., that we see in the city. One thing I'm very proud to say that from the department perspective, first of all, I came here August of 2020, and in 2020, as you know, we saw a 3% reduction in crime, and that trend has continued in 2021. I think we are going to see almost an 8% reduction in crime in our city. That's reflective on two fronts. Number one is obviously what the department is doing. We are more intel-led in our policing approach. We are using our analytical and intelligence much better to be more focused on where the police needs to be and who we need to target. So that's the policing kind of enforcement piece, if you want to call it that we've changed a lot. The second piece, I believe that I owe that to the citizens of this great city, because they are actually listening to us and safeguarding their property a little bit more. We're still seeing a lot of opportunity crimes in the city, but we're also seeing a little bit of a decline on that front as well. So I owe it to all our citizens, and I hope more and more citizens really get on that partnership with us to safeguard their property. It doesn't eliminate crime, but we believe that the more we work together, we can really reduce the crime rate in this city.
Chief, what are your thoughts on the federal drug courts? Do you feel that they're actually making a difference in the lives of those who are trying to get clean?
The federal drug courts actually have been in existence in Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge. We just saw them starting I think in November of 2020. So it's at the infancy stage in Lethbridge, but I know with the long-term approach from the other cities, they have proven to be very effective. One thing I can offer for Lethbridge, right now we have 8 people who have gone through the program and many more who are on the list to get into that program. And the 8 people who've actually gone in the program, we haven't seen them again. It's working effectively for them. These courts actually are providing people an opportunity to get out of that lifestyle, but more importantly, providing them with skills, housing, etc., to get them on the right track in life. And we certainly welcome that. And again, but again, it's only just been not a long time since we've had these courts in our city, but so far we see positive way forward on that.
You know, we've been in the COVID-19 pandemic now for over 2 years. I've talked to a lot of first responders that say, you know what, we're feeling stressed out. We're feeling burnt out right now. It's really affecting us, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What have you seen with your police officers? Are they suffering from burnout or any PSD as a result?
Well, it's been difficult, like for our department, like any other police department in this country. Policing is a business that we can't just stop working just because of pandemic and COVID. 911 calls are made. The expectation from the public is for police to show up and give them the service they deserve. But it's been difficult because our officers are human beings, same as other people. We've had officers who have had to isolate and go through the process of getting better because of the virus. That puts a lot of pressure on the people who are working, and also there's a whole bunch of other elements on that, because in as much as police is required to safeguard people's health, etc., we also the people who have to go ensuring that everyone's rights are protected. When you look at the protests that are going on right now. We want to ensure that our citizens have a right to peaceful protest and getting their message out, but at the same time, safeguarding the safety of other people to make sure other people's rights aren't stepped on. So it's a balancing act. So the resource pressure is one element, but there are other challenges that come in our world when you're dealing with this sort of environments, how they're actually putting more stress on the police. But I'm quite proud of this team because we've been able to provide very effective relationship and policing, even in cases of when there are protests, etc., to work effectively with the organizers to make sure they're respectful and they're peaceful, get their message out, and at the same time not disturb other people. And this team has done a fantastic job balancing all those things to serve every citizen here.
So what help is readily available to your officers who may be suffering from PTSD and burnout?
We have a group of psychologists right in our city to provide immediate assistance to anyone who asks for help right away. We have an amazing chaplain who's constantly in communication with our police officers and every employee here to make sure to listen to them and provide the support that they need. And we have obviously many different programs within the organization for people when they identify someone is not feeling well and they're not doing well, they can kind of reach out and put a hand on their shoulder and try to guide them in the right direction. As you know, we even introduced an app, wellness app, last year on all the phones that our officers have, just to check their own temperature at times to see how they are doing. Mental health is a condition that until the individual doesn't, if they take an active role in getting the help they need at the right time, that's the best approach to deal with mental health. Unfortunately, sometimes when the department comes across a situation that the officer needs help, at times it's too deep into the issue, and we have to obviously wait much longer for our employees to get back and to be healthy again. But no efforts are actually is like we continue to provide whatever we can to provide the assistance they need. But my message to all our employees has always been, they need to also look after their own health and recognize that. And when they put their hand up, we are all here to help them out and provide the support they need.
Chief Medizadeh, we only have a couple of short moments left here, but I wanted to ask you about your relationship with the Lethbridge Police Service and the Blood Tribe Police and the Sage Clan, and how important that is here in southwestern Alberta. Tell me a bit about those relationships.
We have an amazing relationship with Blood Tribe Police. I've met with previous chiefs and the new chief, Chief Ironshirt. We meet regularly, every month actually, to discuss how we can help each other, the two departments, because we serve many citizens that actually go back and forth between the two communities. And certainly we have an amazing relationship that continues to get better. As far as Sage Clan goes, they're a community organization that are providing service and help to our downtown group, and we certainly our watch program is quite connected with them, and we certainly appreciate and respect what they do for the city.
Lethbridge Police Chief Shahin Medizadeh, thanks so much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much for your time and have a wonderful day.
You as well. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.